Liberty and justice for all.
There, I was kidding. Agenda. I have a motion to set the agenda as presented.
Motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Any discussion about the four agenda items? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Moved by Cotton. Second. Okay, first agenda item is quick introductions and reviewing expectations. Start with the quick introductions. I was Clint, Derringer, Trustee, just joined the board at the beginning of January. Chairing the facilities committee is new to me. I was on the board before. I was not one of the community members chosen before. In terms of facilities, I started working in facilities when I worked at Chrysler at Warren Stamping Plant in 2015. I had that job for 3 years, and then I took over capital investment and maintenance funding in North America for Chrysler in 2018. I kept that job from 2022. Then I got into procurement and operations for our software division in Stellantis for a year, and then I just moved to the city of Detroit. I'm now a project manager in data analytics. So that's my professional background tied to facilities. I have more conversation if anybody's interested. Feel free to ask. We can talk more about that. Don't have to give any more or less detail as we go around the table here. Just real quickly, who you are, what your role is, anything related to facilities that you want to share, and then we'll talk about expectations afterwards. Go ahead, Ben.
Ben Matteson, Director of Facilities.
Andrea, Tuttle, Superintendent.
Tim Klepp, trustee on the board, charge of the board. So.
Sean Cotton, trustee on the board.
Roy Bishop, Deputy Superintendent.
So in terms of expectations for the committee, what I think starting very high level, the concept is for our facilities committee to review in detail all of the different recommendations or proposals for different types of projects or maintenance needs and spending before it goes to the full board. So the concept, again, very simply, is that we can use the committee meetings to dive into a greater level of detail than we may be able to at the full board meeting. So that's, in general, what we want to do. We know that in January, we authorized kind of the next steps to start preparing for preparing a bond request in November. That obviously will be kind of center stage on most of our facilities work in terms of looking ahead and planning. And then as well, last November, we also passed an increased sinking fund. So the collections from the end of 2024 will be the last of the previous sinking fund. It was approximately $3.5 million. And then in the coming December, the collections will increase to between $11 and $12 million. So all of that project planning and detail is what we plan to review in these meetings, and as well as anything that is emerging in terms of the needs and maintenance needs and things that are there any questions from administration, trustees about expectations going forward, operations? Trustee,
Just a clarifying question. Ben, as director of facilities, how do we see maybe through that facility? How do we see a question that is just strictly within your purview of the day-to-day job you schedule when you make decisions and you do things, versus things that need to come to this committee, versus things that need to go to the full board? Is there like a decision tree or a framework for why things settle on place versus not?
Well, there's a threshold, a monetary threshold that requires a bid, and that's what I would, unless I think something's really controversial or questionable, we would obviously ask for board approval, but other than that, things that are beyond the bid threshold, we would always bring it to this committee first.
Yeah.
And then to the board.
So this committee first, then board, not. And what's that threshold?
30,000, about 30,000 right now.
Yes.
I don't know exactly.
Any other questions about what we talked about so far, expectations, goals? And the last bit that I would add is right now I'm planning for scheduled meetings to be the first Monday of each month, with the idea that a lot of what we talk about in the facilities meeting will drive the board agendas for that coming month. There is one item that we're going to talk about tonight that the plan is to put that onto the agenda for the next meeting. So this committee will be reviewing that, discussing a little bit more of the detail, and then hopefully taking that recommendation forward. It does not mean that we have to have a meeting every month. I can't imagine a month goes by that we don't have something that comes up that we need to meet about. But in that strange case that there's not any agenda items that we need to discuss, then we would cancel the meeting. Probably, if there's nothing to speak about a week prior, I would try to let the committee know, let the administration know, and then publicize that for everybody. And then the reverse of that, if there is a lot to talk about, or if something comes up that needs immediate pressing attention and we want to dive into it at committee level for details, we may add additional committee meetings. They may or may not be on Mondays, depending on exactly what the needs are. So just so everybody knows, you can kind of pencil in the first Monday of the month for facilities committee meetings if you're planning to come on a regular basis. They may or may not stay on those meetings. You may add and have more than one meeting in a month. You may have less than a meeting in a month if they have very slow periods. Okay, I think that is it. I'll give one more opportunity for any questions, clarifications on the first agenda item. Okay. The second agenda item is a question for the administration. We want to discuss the remaining 2018 bond funds. This is starting from a high level. What projects are still in any status that is not complete, wrapped up, paid, invoiced, whatever the correct terminology is for our financial systems. And then after all of that closing and accounting, what are the remaining funds and what discussions have been had about earmarking those funds going forward. So two big sub questions there. Status on any projects from 2018, and then remaining funds and conversations surrounding those funds. So,
Well, I'll preface by saying that obviously our CFO left in December, so we're still working. We have an interim CFO. I've been here less than a year trying to wrap my head around the budget. Lots of questions still to be had. So I say that because I'm always a little bit nervous about giving exact numbers, but right now it looks like there's about $2 million remaining in the 2018 bond funds with all projects completed and all bills paid.
okay, so is there any conversation that's been had about any subset of that approximate $2 million?
No.
No plans, no previous
It's not been
plans?
spoken for.
Okay. Any questions or conversations about what is remaining in the 2018 bond funds from anybody else in the administration or from the committee? Okay, so we'll use the nice round number of 2 million just for conversation in the absence of exact numbers, which is ballpark, but that's 2 million right now that we expect to be
That's
available.
what Clint Moran has, but we need to clear that through our
Right,
office
right,
as well.
right. Large caveat on top of that number, but for conversation purposes right now, we'll say 2 million.
And I'm sorry, just to clarify, no set projects that currently has been.
Everything's been paid, been through arbitrage. I think we're
No
in the
punch
clear.
lists, no
Punch lists
invoices
have been
outstanding,
completed.
right, all that stuff.
Everything's done.
Okay, then the next one is where I think.
Okay.
Okay, item 2.3, the Trombley window replacement and recommendation. This is where I would like our committee to make a recommendation to the full board on allocating funds from the remaining 2018 bond funds toward replacing the windows at Trombley. I will let Mr. Matteson and Dr. Tuttle speak more about the specifics, and then if there's anything that I feel that I could add at the end in terms of context around that, I will do that, and as well for the rest of the committee members. So I'll turn it over to you. Dr.
I'm gonna
Klepp.
start and then I'll have Mr. Matteson jump in, but regarding the process, I think the recommendation is for the administration to go out for an RFP, a request for proposal. Depending on the numbers that come in, then the board can look at those and decide if they wanna move forward with that. The windows, as you know, are not in great shape, and Mr. Matteson can speak to that. He and I have looked at them numerous times. They're the old wood framed windows that you can actually punch your fingers through at this juncture. So regardless of the fate of Trombley, I know that there's been repeated remarks that there are many on the board who don't wish to get rid of any facilities, whether they're reutilized or not. At some juncture, you're gonna have to replace those windows regardless, so I would recommend moving forward with, and I think that $2 million was somewhat allocated potentially to Trombley. I know there's been discrepancies on that as well, depending on who you ask, but I think in fairness to the Trombley community, minimally to upgrade those windows and to start that process would be my recommendation. And we need to go through the RFP and then the accepting bids, and depending on how the bids come in, the board will have to make a determination at that point, so. And we pay $30,000 is about just to maintain that facility right now.
Yeah, roughly.
On an annual basis, right?
I'm gonna talk anything about the windows.
Yeah, I would agree that, from my, standpoint, the windows are the worst in the district. There's not a doubt. As Dr. Tuttle said, you can stick your finger through some of the windows. There are some unknowns when it comes to abatement when we do that project, so I am having a testing company in right now, testing on if the caulk has asbestos in it, if there's lead paint that we have to deal with, so there's a lot of unknowns to this project, but in my opinion, they are definitely the worst in the whole district.
And the longer you let that facility go, obviously it deteriorates and you start to compromise the structure of the building when water's coming in, the cold, the elements and so forth, so for those reasons, both Mr. Matteson and I think that those windows be replaced as soon as possible. I think we have an approximate cost of those at roughly $1 million, maybe $1.2 million, but again, with escalating costs, depending on when that comes to fruition, and contingencies, that's approximately where I think that RFP is gonna come in. Plant Grant has shared that with us, so there's.
Okay, so I just wanna make sure that we're fully clear on the, kind of the problem statement, right? That this is something that we would be discussing and potentially funding, doing this work regardless of any remaining funds, regardless of the upcoming bond question, regardless of what decisions we make related to the Trombley facility. This is something that we should be doing in terms of making sure that that asset is.
I think that's fair, unless the district wanted to sell the facility, which I don't think anyone has recommended, and you would sell it as is, but given the fact that I don't think that's the intent, and I don't want to speak for anyone, but certainly from what I've heard, that's not the intent. We want to keep that facility structurally as sound as possible, and the windows are the first place to start there.
Again, the big question mark here is abatement, so it could be $1 million, $1.2 million, but until we figure out how we gotta abate this project, that's the biggest unknown right now.
Okay,
That million two, that's associated with the numbers that were developed in the fall.
Correct, and strictly to Mr. Mattison's point, just the replacement of windows. So depending on the unknowns that come up, that you can see that those bids can be much higher.
I mean, I think if we're gonna keep the building in the district, which I think we should, then yes, I don't wanna have a building that, my understanding, could quickly fall apart and deteriorate, and we should invest in it. I know when we were putting some numbers together before, Clint Moran estimated that a elementary school of this square footage would cost about $29 million to build. And whether or not that's off by, I don't know, 10, 20, 30%, that's quite a bit more than, you know, to invest with money that we have. I think that's a great idea to do.
okay. So I'm clear on the need, the scope. We have a ballpark cost with a big caveat about unknowns related to potential abatement. Any other questions related to the scope just of the Windows project, right now what we're talking about? Okay, what details can you share about timing for, from this point forward, again, RFP, full board approval, then all the steps after that, just a high level, again, general review?
Well, first you have to have a first read, if someone's going to recommend an RFP, at the first February meeting to follow the process, then you have a second read, which I believe is February 24th. If the board so approves that, then Clint and Moran starts creating an RFP and works with Mr. Matteson on the scope of that RFP. That typically would take, I don't know how long the RFP, a month or so to complete. Then you put the RFP out to bid. You can put a timeline on that bid if you want 2 weeks, if you want a month. This is actually kind of a decent time to bid. And the other positive going for Trombley is because it's uninhabited, so to speak, doesn't have students in it. Typically, school projects can only be done in the summer. This one obviously can be done outside of that scope of summer hours. So you will get probably some better bids, I would hope, because of that. Additionally, it can be completed ahead of that. I don't have the timeline written for me. We have it. I know I asked the grant Moran, but I don't recall it.
May, June is when we were gonna try to go out to, take it to the board.
So that would be bids coming back
Yes.
in May or June, and then review here, and then the board bids in spring.
And the board will have all of the bids. Obviously, by law, you're supposed to pick the lowest, most responsible bidder.
Is there a standard then, maybe that's like the window, the rating of the window, the quality of the window, is there a basic standard you have to get into?
Yes, and also we're gonna try to maintain the look of the historical look of the building. There's a bunch of standards that we've used. We've done some replacements at Richard, right there in the stairway, and our goal is always to, obviously, being efficient windows, but also matching the historical nature of the building.
So picking up the timing from approximate May, June review and approval, then the actual implementation timeline, again, ballparking based on what we know now.
I have to go back through that email, but I actually have a word on it.
For installation.
Kick off in November.
Obviously, if abatement needs to occur, that takes a lot longer.
Yeah. So, it's, we have bid award, May, June, materials, June through September. These are really high level. Abatement in July and August, masonry repairs if needed, August through October, window installation September through December. Punch list close out January, February.
Install December. Okay, so I mean, those are the big three things, right? Timing, funding, scope. Are there any other questions about what is, we're gonna put on the table here related to the windows in 2018 bond funds? Okay, I am going to make a motion that we recommend to the full board authorizing Dr. Tuttle to put together and release an RFP for replacing windows at Trombley, with the idea that we will use 2018 bond funds for that allocation. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 3-0. Great. Okay. All right, 2.4 is, again, more discussion about how the committee going forward will support the 2025 bond request for upcoming in November, and how the committee's tasks will kind of fold into that timeline. Dr. Tuttle, could you give us kind of again, this high-level overview of the timeline for the bond request with some of the key dates, key deadlines before we talk about the committee-specific tasks?
Yes, so what I presented to the board was a November election, which would mean that the bond language, would need to be in by August 11th. So you work backwards from there. I think I said multiple times at the board meeting, this is incredibly expedited because it equates to about $120 million. And although bond language can be general, there is some specificity within there. So you need a committee to determine. Although $120 million sounds like a lot of money, there are districts going out for billion-dollar bonds now. So in the day, when I started, $120 million would have seemed exorbitant. That's not exorbitant anymore. So I say that because you think $120 million goes far away, but it doesn't in today's world anymore. So we need to establish a committee, which I think that we're hoping by policy, the board president establishes a committee. I've shared with the board president what facets of a community should possibly be represented on such a committee. And then I presume she'll work with other board members to determine who will meet the particular roles, representing school, elementary, middle, high, preschool, north, south, athletics, fine arts, yada, yada, yada. There's about 15 positions, so to speak. You want board members, council. I know in previous there were about 50 people involved in that, but there was a lot longer time to plan. If this passes, it's a no new mill pass. If it doesn't, you can go again, we can go again, but there would be an additional because it'll drop off in December. And you would miss the December collection levy for, because we're a December tax levy, the district is. So you would miss the 2025 December levy if it does not pass. So at this juncture, you need to get a committee. Mr. Matteson and I have been working closely with Clint already. They are updating what I call the 252 list, which is the list of needs that was established in 2022. They're updating it to remove items that have been fulfilled, whether it be the bond or the sinking funds. And then they're updating it to what's remaining, trying to categorize priorities in that, as well as put costs associated with that, because of course those have increased as well in 2022. So it is my hope, and of course, Trustee Derringer, this is your spot, but it is my hope that we would have a committee established by the end of February, that they would come to this meeting, be part of the discussions, kind of look at what the administration, Ben in particular, Clint recommends, look at the wants, understanding that I guarantee that 120 does not cover all the wants of the various entities in this community, so then you have to prioritize and get to what you can afford. And that's the process moving forward. Then it becomes an education campaign to the public, to exactly what is going to be on the ballot, understanding, answering questions, Q&A, presentations, very similar to a sinking fund or the operating millage, which we went through last year at this time, but incredibly more comprehensive. A bond, like I said, of this magnitude typically takes probably 2 years. So this is very expedited, but we want to capture the time so that we bonds that are no new taxes pass at a much higher rate than when you're asking people to increase. So that's kind of the layout. So we would have it in by, it actually has to be in by August 12th. We would have it in no later than August 11th for the November election.
Thank you. I would have two kind of follow-up questions. First is the conversation and the context around a new levy going forward as opposed to what is currently going on. So can you help kind of simplify those terms, again, for everybody in the broader conversation, why we're feeling like it's important to get it done this year, potentially?
So regardless of if it's new or maintaining, it goes on the ballot as a bond proposal, you're collecting bonds, but you can educate and say there's no new, this is in essence a renewal. There's about $1 million that would fall off after December of 2025, so at that juncture then you're asking if you want to resume the 3.14, I believe it is, mils that's on the bond, you know,
Okay.
3.14. Then you're asking for, you would have to say it would be an increase. In November, it's not an increase, it's just staying what the community has paid for its bond over time. It could be 20 years, this is the 24, we talked about that. We looked at the interest rate differential and what you would actually collect. It doesn't behoove us to go for 24 years. So regardless, the bond language could stay the same from a November election to a May 2026 election to an August to November 26 election. I would assume that if people don't pass it in November, that typically you would do a survey to see what the community liked or didn't like. But then when you do your educational materials starting in 2026, the educational materials would have to show an increase.
Okay, and then my other follow-up question, hopefully to help clarify or kind of preempt any questions that you may have, is the difference between bond funds and their potential use and sinking fund and their potential use, and then the operating funds and their potential uses.
So operating is strictly operating costs. 22 million goes in the general fund, can be used pretty much however you want to operate the district. Sinking funds are very specific uses. I have shared this before. It would be like in the olden, when I first started, when I first started, the uses for sinking fund was different than what it is today. So when I first started, I would tell people if you cut off a roof to a building and turn it over and ship it out, anything that fell out could not be used for sinking funds. And we would all fall out. These tables would fall out, phones would fall out, technology, pens, whatever. What doesn't fall out? Roofs, boilers, lockers inset into walls, floors, and so forth. So sinking fund has very specific uses. Then the next legislators allowed for technology to be included in sinking funds. That's the sinking fund that we have collected last on in December of 2025. So we could utilize technology purchases for that. This one that just passed, they've now added transportation. So capital projects, not operational transportation, but and transportation includes like trucks and so forth. So those are the uses that sinking funds be used for. Bond really can be used for whatever you want it for as long as you specify it to the voters and you stay within the contents of your bond language. So furniture, you can use bond for furniture, which is something we've discussed, like there's some very aging furniture in this district. Perhaps that's part of the use, I don't want to throw ideas at the wall, but doing it with dollars for furniture in the district. So I don't know if that kind of explains.
That's clear. And the just kind of who sets the language that kind of governs these things is kind of what I wanted to make sure.
The legislator sets the language, sets the available usage. Obviously, we work with Miller Canfield's attorney Tom Collis, and he will help us with the language. But the language is somewhat standard for the purpose of repairing, restructuring. If you're going to add on, it's pretty standard. But if you're going to do a major project, and I'm just going to say air conditioning throughout the district, that would be something you'd want to include in the language.
And then sinking fund, the inclusion of transportation is we could purchase in theory a new vehicle and bus, right? But we can't use sinking fund dollars to put gas in it for the rest of the year.
Or for the people driving the bus or the operation.
So it's
all
again,
capital,
it's by asset type and then spending. Okay, thank you for helping that. Any other questions or comments related to kind of the timeline, what we're looking at for the remainder of the year on the bond request? Okay, so how do we see that fitting in with the committee's work and these tasks? Again, the kind of the roles and responsibilities or the expectations that I laid out to start, we're hoping that the conversations and detail will happen within these committee meetings, where we're able to talk about project specifics, needs, scope, all of those types of things. In an expedited timeline for the bond request coming up, that is going to be a lot of conversation. I think our next committee meeting likely will have, if we are successful in getting a bond committee together by the end of February and then start that discussion in March, I would imagine there will be a lot more detail and conversation in that meeting as opposed to this meeting.
And Plant Moran, I've already asked them to be, I think it's March 3rd, I've already asked them to be present, to have that document updated, to discuss other needs of the district since that document was created, yada, yada, yada.
So that is the next really, really big step, is to kind of get all of the stakeholders represented on our bond advisory committee and then fold that into the committee agenda for March. And if I'm being as frank and upfront and honest as I can be, I would expect probably a second meeting sometime in March in order to make sure that we get all of the stakeholders and fill out the entire conversation by by the end of that month. So that's me right now. I know that our next meeting will be at the beginning of March. I anticipate that we may have a second meeting in March, TBD. So that's best that I can kind of peek into the crystal ball. Are there any other questions about how the facilities committee and the bond advisory committee are going to kind of play?
Yeah, just clarifying, so President Warden is currently composing or inviting people to be on the bond advisory committee?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and then that committee, we would want them, just clarify what you think the relationship between this subcommittee and that bond.
The bond advisory committee would be participants within the facilities committee meeting.
Okay.
And so we, as 3 board trustees and the administration, we are kind of the conduit to get onto the full board agenda,
Okay.
right? So the next huge target from the bond advisory committee is to put together the scope of what we want to do and how we want to structure the language by the August deadline in order to make sure that we can do all of the projects that we collectively decide are priorities. So between March and August, the bond advisory committee within this meeting will be discussing what those priorities are and how we can give ourselves as many options as possible and be as specific as possible, with also an eyeball on educating the public about what we intend to do.
So those committee members are employees of the district?
No, they could be. So, again, I have quite a lot of experience with sinking fund and bonds, and, but I don't know our community yet. I have been here less than a year, so I don't know the community. So typically I would recommend people on a committee, but they might be a parent that represents each elementary. There might be a middle school parent, an athletic parent, a fine arts parent, robotics, whatever. There was a list of about 15 different roles, so to speak. They can be employees, they can be board members, they can be council members. And then I was hoping, and I don't know if you've had any conversations with President Warden regarding this, but that she would kind of reach out to those of you who know the community best. Obviously, they elected you, so I presume that you have a good handle on who would represent that entity best to share voices. And it needs to be people that understand the whole district, the forest versus I'm just focused on this one tree. You need people who understand the whole district and have the best interest of the entire district as a whole in mind, not just one simple facet of the district. So I think that President Warden, I don't want to speak for her, but I believe that she'll be reaching out to those of you to perhaps help her in filling those roles. And then communicating, asking the people if they're interested in that as well.
Okay, and then in your experience, the agenda for such a committee, is it to, and probably not just a simple one or the other answer, but there's an element of preparing the language to go on the ballot that has to happen by a certain date. And then a larger purview would be looking at the entire expected value of the bond. Does the committee essentially go through a process of accounting for the entire $120 million?
Yeah, so
Regardless of whether all that makes it on the ballot or not.
yep, it's a great question. So Plan Moran is in the process of kind of assessing the district again, doing kind of an audit of all of our facilities. So I anticipate that they'll come to that March 3rd and they kind of lead it. And they will start, I think they lead it. They will start with, hey, here are all the possible things that you could do. The wants, the needs, the wants, and then you kind of have to divide what's a need, what's a want. And then you prioritize. And this isn't one meeting, this is multiple meetings to get to this juncture. And they associate a financial amount to each one. And it's the scope. So I'm going to give you an example, and I'm always candidly a little bit nervous about saying, because this isn't something that, but let's say you want to do furniture. Let me use that, because I think that is something that we need to look at. Is it furniture for every classroom? Are we doing all new teacher desks? So is furniture going to be $5 million or is it going to be $10 million? And what's included in 5 versus 10 million? So it goes up, all the potentials are listed, and it's a comprehensive list, and maybe it's $500 million in needs and wants collectively, which is not unreasonable. And people need to understand when you enter that room, you may walk out and You may have nothing that you wanted included in the list, but then there's a priority that happens, so I've seen it done different ways where everything is listed and each committee member might get like 5, 10, 15 dots, I don't know how Clint ran, I'm just speaking, and they get to show their priorities, and then we discuss that. And then you talk about, okay, well, you put them in order of priorities, and then you go down until you get to 120 million, and that's your kind of cutoff. And then you just talk, well, okay, if we want furniture, we had it at 10 million, but then we can't get something else, so let's move furniture to a lesser at 5 million so that we can pick something up on that group. And by the end, there's a comprehensive, these are the things, and your attorney will group them into bond language. So everything isn't specific, you're not saying, you know, classroom, you might say classroom furniture, but not teacher desks. Again, just examples, but they group it into legalese to put into the bond language. That's how I've seen it done in the past.
Okay, but even in describing it that way, at some point you end up with the bond language, and there isn't a continuing role for that bond advisory committee after that. Because they've already prioritized the entire
That's correct.
that is led to the language. Okay.
Yeah, then the election, then they have to pass bonds,
Yeah, okay.
then you do the exact same process, RFPs,
Yeah, okay.
construction managers, yada, yada, yada.
And then I wanted to also try to show kind of how we've laid out all these different pieces and that they tie together there. There's what we call the 252 list of critical needs in terms of maintenance on the buildings and facilities. Some of those already are certainly earmarked in the sinking fund dollars and plan. We want to make sure that we're being mutually exclusive and also as cumulatively exhaustive as possible on that list of needs with these different funding types, right? So we have sinking funds that are a much more known, I guess, amount and good timing of that revenue, and then large question marks tied to the bond. So we want to make sure that the most critical needs are coming out of our immediate sinking fund dollars and we're taking care of those, and then we're not echoing those same needs as part of this bond advisory committee conversation. So again, that's why these things all kind of fold together inside of this facilities committee meeting, so that we are not hyper-focused on any particular piece of the scope, but also that we're trying to take as holistic of an approach as possible and being as clear as possible with everybody involved. So I hope that at least to this point, the conversations that we've had kind of show all of those different pieces and how they fit together. That was my main goal for tonight's meeting. So to the committee, to the administration, are there any other questions related to 2.4, comments on the bond request, committee, how those things are interrelated for the time being? Okay, seeing none, then I would like to open up the floor for public comment. There's a lot of public participation as expected. I don't plan on timing everybody's comment. I would appreciate it if you would at least stand, state your name, city of residence, and then make your comment. Please, be as respectful of everybody's time and a lot of the emotions that are involved in what we're here to talk about. And then just raise your hand as we go. So we'll start at the front left of the room here. We'll go across this way to my right. And if I miss you, then we don't leave until you're done. So anybody that has
I'm gonna just interject. Dr. Bishop leads policy, which we're trying to keep these meetings to an hour. We have about 20 minutes before policy's coming in here.
Correct.
So depending on the public comments, what do you say?
Is that 6:30, sorry?
Yeah. So just be aware of that.
Yeah.
Cognizant of that. So.
Thank you. Okay, please raise your hand if you have a comment. Go ahead.
So I'll try to make this quick. My name is Joshua Wools. I'm a proud parent of a couple of Pierce middle schoolers. One came with us today. And I'm also a coach of one of the robotics teams, 360 Robot Lab. I'm also a business owner, and I want to bring all these three things together. So I bought a dental lab about 6 years ago, and dental labs are historically not a very technologically forward industry. They usually consist of the people sitting at a bench with wax and carving out teeth and then casting teeth. It's not a very technologically forward industry, but things are changing. They're changing quickly and they're changing drastically. And we have incorporated 3D printing and milling and automation into our dental lab. And as a business owner, I see more and more need for people that understand these things, CAD/CAM, designing and then manufacturing, automation and AI. And I think it's very important that we focus on technology, science and technology within the district. I've been working with Sherry here, and we've been trying to promote a STEM center or location where we can help to provide resources for our students in these technology forward fields. It's we as parents moved to Grosse Pointe for the school system. Literally, we're not from Michigan. We didn't know anything about the area, and when we looked through, Grosse Pointe was where we ended up, specifically because of the school system. But as much as I love it here and I love the schools, it's been a little bit of a struggle with the technology side of things, getting our kids access to this. So I think this is something we should definitely focus on as we move forward with this.
My name is Sherry Betcher, and I'm the coach of the all-girls middle and high school robotics team, the Botmasters. I'm here tonight because we have an incredible opportunity to invest in the future of STEM education in Grosse Pointe. Our students are eager to innovate, create, and compete, but they need the space and the resources to do it. I want to share with you how neighboring districts are doing it, and how they're leading the way, and how we can follow their example to ensure our students don't get left behind. First, let's take a look at Chelsea. They invested in STEM by using funds from an $81 million bond issue in 2016. That money helped them create a CTE and robotics center that gives students hands-on experience in ways that simply weren't possible before. Then there's Novi, who launched North and South America's first ever 6th grade robotics curriculum and has a comprehensive CTE program at the high school level. They cover everything from applied engineering and cybersecurity to hospitality and tourism. University of Detroit Jesuit built a $16 million, 40,000 square foot STEM center with a state-of-the-art labs for biology, engineering, and hands-on research. At Liggett, they've integrated first Lego League robotics into their elementary curriculum, and now they're planning to construct their own STEM center. They're gathering insights by flying their STEM coordinator around the country to learn and scope out the best K-12 programs that this country has to offer, our neighbors. Farmington provides Tech Girl program, which is an after-school program introducing 8th grade girls to 3D printing, laser cutting, CNC machining, and robotics. They also have STEM Immersion Saturday series, which engages students and families in exploring STEM careers together. Their BoE has actively been surveying their community STEM interests, and tomorrow night they're hosting a town hall to discuss next steps to take that step even further. Even Brown City, a much smaller district, has invested in a high school STEM lab and also launched an after-school STEM program for younger students, and it's already attracting 60 participants. These districts are making a real investment in STEM, and it's paying off. Now, let's look at our own district. Our parent-run robotics team have worked hard, but space, especially on the south end, is a major challenge. Without designated facilities, it's tough to grow these programs and give students the full STEM experience they deserve. That's why we need to transform the IA building into a state-of-the-art STEM and CTE center. Why south? Well, because location matters. The southernmost part of the district is 6 miles from north, which is the northernmost part is only 5 miles from south. But it's not just about distance, it's about accessibility and participation. Josh mentioned that it took him 25 minutes to get here tonight from the south end. I know it's only a couple of miles, but traffic matters. Traffic and roadways make it harder for students to get to north, which potentially means fewer students will take advantage of the STEM center there. If we want to maximize participation, we need a facility that's centrally located and easy to get to for all students. By choosing the IA building at South, we can create a hub for robotics and engineering and hands-on STEM education. It would allow us to offer more courses, expand partnerships, with industry leaders and prepare students for the careers of the future. Neighboring districts are setting the bar for what's possible. It's time we do the same. Let's make sure GP students have the resources, opportunities, and space to succeed in a world that's becoming more tech-driven by the day. Thank you for your time. I'm really excited to see what we can accomplish together. That was about 3.5 minutes. 3.5 minutes.
Amazing parents, right? This is like, by golly, I could not have asked for a better, situation at Pierce. We started all girls masters 7 years ago, I think 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So, but I was hired basically because my interview about wanting to be project-based
Tell
learning.
us who you are.
Oh, so sorry. Jane Pleath, retired GM sculptor and now art teacher at Pierce for 10 years. K-12, LQ visual arts, but definitely always looking to tie to real world jobs. So was dying to do this, got hired, and they told me I would be able to do it, and I've been waiting 10 years. So this is my first semester where I have more innovation and design classes than I have art. And it stokes me, it makes me so excited. You came in the other day, it was great. I have Mayor Hodges coming in to, hopefully again, talk about the architecture unit. We do a lot of things in that class that are really fun. We do a healthcare unit with Vikas Reland and also with James Adams, a former South teacher. It's a lot of fun. The kids are engaged, they're excited, they want to learn about what's going to happen. This is their future, their life, their world. What's going to happen? It's on them. So I think it's a great thing that we need to really push. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Real quick, in terms of a time check, if you plan on making a comment, can you raise your hand so we can kind of count and add up here? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Approximately 3 minutes in would be well over. So we have about 12 minutes and about 8 people that want to speak. So please try to make it as efficient as possible.
I'll just be really quick. My name's Janine Eckert, and I live in Balfour in the Park. I just wanted to say thank you for at least moving to the next step on the windows for Trombley. Everybody knows I'm one of the advocates. I do believe the new bond would be amazing for the whole district. I do also think that Trombley needs a seat at the table, so I don't know how Mrs. Warden is picking her candidates, but someone from the community at least needs to represent Trombley, because if it does end up opening again, then someone needs to also be advocating for that as well. So, thanks.
Dick Shorter, Grosse Pointe Park. I think any bond issue ought to be addressed with the thought of opening up Trombley as an elementary school. I came from a healthcare environment, and I've seen firsthand the trauma of a young child being hit as she was crossing a major thoroughfare. I said this before. You take somebody's leg off, that's going to change your life forever. Hopefully that's all. There could be crossing Jefferson during rush hour is not a good thing. And I know we passed a bond years ago with the thought that $6 million was going to go to Trombley. We were lied to at that point. Hopefully that won't happen again if we pass a bond. It just, we have $2 million left in the bond that was allocated to Trombley. It was allocated to Trombley. And we got another $1 million sitting in a bank account waiting to be thrown at Trombley when it opens up as an elementary. That in itself should take care of an awful lot of work. So any discussion about any bond should be asked Trombley as an elementary. Thank you.
Anybody else? Raise your hand if you have questions.
Hi, I'm Ian Sutters. I'm a Grosse Pointe Park resident. I've got 3 kids that are going to be in the school system. 2 that are in right now, 1 that will be at some point. And I'm here today to talk about the Elworthy Field tennis courts and the park surrounding it and the management of the tennis courts, the repair of the tennis courts. And long story short, I sent a letter to the athletic director a bit ago, sorry, I'm going to point tonight, about basically the poor maintenance of the tennis courts, and the pictures I've included. There's some renderings of maybe what could be done to improve them by replacing them with concrete, which is a better material for the long term. Right now they don't drain properly, so they need to be repaved every couple of years because the asphalt cracks, freeze thaw. Also, for a community building to be put in near the tennis courts, which would have public bathrooms, could be used by the tennis team, could be used by the soccer leagues, could be used by the baseball field, could be used by the tot lot. Something that's kind of sorely needed in that park to make it as good of a community asset as everybody expects it to be. And the big picture I want to communicate is that the Elworthy Field tennis courts are the most vibrant tennis community location on the entire east side. So Grosse Pointe, St. Clair Shores, Harper Woods, Detroit, everybody plays at Elworthy because they are accessible, because they're centrally located. And that is a huge strength, a huge opportunity. Tennis is a great sport for people to play their entire life, when they're young, when they're old. People of all different backgrounds can play tennis, all different body types, etc. And our courts at Elworthy are substandard by any kind of competitive high school standard. And certainly for one of the most winningest programs in Grosse Pointe South history, when you arrive at the courts, you don't get that, there's no branding for Grosse Pointe South. There's not much signage or wayfinding, and there's not much sense of ownership by the community, whether that's the school district, whether that's the city of Grosse Pointe. So I think that I could work with the school boards, the district, to help build awareness about the opportunity to improve the tennis courts, to improve the community park by adding these bathrooms, these other amenities. And I've got a lot of experience. I work in commercial property management. I started a tennis league in Grosse Pointe with 200 people in it. All my kids play. So I'm excited to work with you all over time on this, and I hope it's considered for inclusion into the bond. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Derringer. Michelle Hodges, Mayor and City of Grosse Pointe Park. Just would like to thank you all for continuing to invest in Trombley and protecting it from further decay while we go through the problem-solving process. We feel very encouraged about the future prospects for the building and the school and its role in being a vibrant part of the community. And we also appreciate good, solid, data-driven decision-making. We believe that that's important. So know that the City of Grosse Pointe Park remains committed to bringing its resources to the table. At this evening's meeting of City Council, we will contemplate the formation of a committee that can help drive the advocacy process and assist with the surveying process and the like, and other fact-finding that might be necessary. I'll also report back to the Council tonight and to the community about the outcomes of this meeting, and I'm sure that will be very well received. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time tonight.
Anybody else in this? Yes.
Hi, Kevin Nugent. First of all, I want to compliment all the people that are speaking tonight because you're speaking so kindly about the concerns that you have, but you're also kind of skipping over some of the points of, you say you don't have room at South, but literally tech is in the basement at South in like a converted storage room. It's really much worse than how it's labeled, and the tennis courts at Elworthy they're appalling. It looked like, a broken concrete everywhere, or asphalt. And Trombley, the concerns there, I went by there the other day, and there's so much wood rot and everything else, so I'm glad you guys are earmarking some funds to look after that. And the people that are Trombley residents, would-be elementary school goers, had a lot of concerns, and certainly those could be highlighted. But all these conversations highlight the fact that there are so many people that have input into what's going to happen. And I was very surprised, although I'm not shocked, that there's already a committee or work being done to form a committee, and that's the first time I've heard of it, and I don't know if anybody else has heard of it either. And there's always been a process in place for inviting people to participate on those things, and it's just a bit of a concern that one individual may or may not be tagging certain individuals to participate on that committee without having the input of so many voices in the community that have needs, concerns, and wants and investments into the programs that they're involved in. So I would just like to mention that.
Hi, Lisa Pappas, City of Grosse Pointe. I just want to encourage you to work really hard to move the decision on Trombley forward. So it's a yes or no. We have a very limited time window to capture. We have lots of young families moving in. They are going to be making decisions on private school. They have to drive their child to school. They may choose something other than the Grosse Pointe Public Schools. There's a lot of investment in downtown Detroit that we can capture with a family neighborhood like we have south of Jefferson. That was a vibrant family neighborhood and always has been as long as I've lived here. I taught at Trombley briefly, and it was a wonderful, wonderful community of students walking to that school. We will continue to grow our district. We need to invest in Trombley. I would encourage you, $3 million, $2 million in the sinking fund and $1 million from the Grosse Pointe Park Foundation is a great start to opening the doors. I would love to see that open next fall so we can capture if we had an answer by March, these people aren't gonna be putting deposits on private and parochial schools, and I know that's a high and a very quick bar. And just as an aside, I think, especially being that Trombley is a topic for these committee meetings going forward, I would encourage you to find a different location than this, because this room is not accessible to the public for committee meetings. And so I would love if you would change the committee meetings where they are more accessible to the public. Thank you.
Hi, Ahmed Ismail. I'm a resident of Grosse Pointe Woods. A number of comments listening to the meeting and listening to what's going on. First of all, one of the things that I didn't hear mentioned here about Trombley and one of the cautions, because one of the problems we're facing in Grosse Pointe right now as far as its school administration is a lack of institutional history. And it's a challenge that Dr. Tuttle faces and that the whole community faces, in fact. And one of the things we should learn from what was done at Trombley in the past was, those of you that remember walking through that building and seeing all these beautiful little Post-it notes everywhere, and to try to urge people to vote for a bond, when you call out specific items, I'm gonna put a new mirror up here, I'm gonna put this new, I'm gonna put that new. And none of it happened. And you induced people to vote on a bond, on a sinking fund that was really, the way the wording was so specific in the pitch, but then when the bond language came about, it was so general that money could be shuffled anywhere. And that's exactly what happened. And what I urge you to do as you're structuring and you're going forward with this whole process of renewing this bond is when you make a list, in fact, it's ironic you're having this meeting, because I taught a class up in Lansing to school board members on bond oversight, making sure promises made or promises kept. And it's so ironic that this is basically what you're facing now, and you cannot form a committee to work on a bond without having an application process like we did for committees 2 years ago, and where the entire community is made aware of the opportunity and that they fill out an application and you look for skill sets that'll balance the bond committee to the entire community and reflect the makeup of the community. It's not just a Trombley bond or Grosse Pointe South bond or North bond, and that it would be a travesty to try to form a committee and pass a bond after people got such a shaft on the last one and not have a total representation of the community and a fair process to apply to serve on it. That's number one. Number two, when you go forward with your bond language, I know that some of you have not been involved with bonds before, but when you go forward with bond language, the pitch that's always made to the public is very specific to their heart. The pitch that's made to the board when the bond language comes forward is, let's not be specific in this bond language because it'll handcuff us. You can't sing both tunes this time around because the public's smartened up. Yep. And so,
Yep.
And you better, whatever you're doing with this bond language, you better make sure that it is specific and that people can touch and feel what you're going forward with. Because they got a lot of communities, not just Trombley, look at what Park got. They had $6 million going to that building, zip, you know. And my last comment, I know we're short on time, is actually 2 comments. First of all, you cannot have these facility meetings back to back with another meeting. There's too much that's going to be going on with them, and you cannot. They have to be open-ended on the back end. And my other thing that I wanted to comment on is that it's great that you're going forward with the Trombley windows. 2 things from a construction background standpoint. You do not want to phase any part of that construction over the summer, because what it does is that jams the price up. Because if a contractor knows that he's got facility and people working there over the summer, he's going to throw you into the summer pricing zone. So either step up the project and get the construction done and move it before the summer, or you cannot time it, just to caution you from a construction background standpoint, you do not wanna have any part of this happening over the summer. And, I have a lot of other comments, I know you got another meeting, but, please, don't sing a tune of being open and transparent and then not open up that process of people participating on the committee, to the public. It's a huge error in judgment, and it would be a big business mistake. Don't do that. You won't pass that bond if you do.
Fool me once.
No. We won't pass it without the park.
Is there anybody else that hasn't had an opportunity to speak, would like to?
Hi. My name is Krishna Marakovich, and I wanted to speak on behalf of the STEM program and Space for STEM that Sherry was discussing. My son was able to join the robotics team this fall, and they did so well at regionals that they ended up being able to go to states. And they were practicing in the lobby of Pierce's auditorium. And then, kind of as an underdog story, nobody really expected them to make it to states, and we did, but we had to pack up that practice arena because I think plays were starting, they needed that auditorium. So both robotics teams ended up practicing in my basement to go to states. And I mean, my basement's okay, but like, I really think that Grosse Pointe can do better for these kids. And so I would really appreciate it if you would consider funding this.
Derringer, I'm sorry, I have one other real quick thing. Make sure
Can
when
everybody
you,
else have a
oh, I'm
chance?
sorry, go ahead.
One in the corner.
I was just going to comment about the dedicated stuff program. My name's Clint. I'm Marine from the park. My daughter's at Masters. And yeah, the dedicated program is definitely needed. Please, definitely set it up.
Okay, Mr. Ismail, go ahead.
Yeah, one other comment is, when you're going forward with this window program, concurrently with that, you need to be going forward with what's gonna happen with Trombley. You cannot say, okay, we're gonna fix windows, we're at the end of the year now, let's start thinking about what to do with Trombley. There has to be concurrent activities, I don't know if you have another committee or whatever you do, but concurrently with fixing those windows, when those windows are fixed, you need to have a game plan on where you're going with the building. That's it, thank you.
Secure entries.
Anybody else with a comment that would like an opportunity to speak? Going once, anybody else?
But just to kind of, this is Renee Jakubowski, I'm also in the park. Like, I really, really appreciate this money going forward or at least proposed towards the windows at Trombley. But then it would really stink to have that get done and then say, but we can't open because we need a secure vestibule. We really need like these decisions and this construction to be done. So we have so many kids waiting to go into that school now that have nowhere to go in the fall because there's not enough room for them at Lippert. And it is not fair for our families to be spread. Some have to go to Monteith, some have to go to Mare because there's no room for them. We have 34 kids waiting to start kindergarten in the fall.
Yes.
And we need space for them now. They need elementary school. If those parents have to get in their car to drive them to Defer, they're gonna go to St. Paul. It's not that expensive, and almost every young parent we've seen, we had 4 hours out at the Chili Fest this weekend, they all said the same thing. If I have to get in the car, I'm driving them to St. Joan, I'm driving them, some are going to Cranbrook right now. We are losing people because we need to make a move. And it helps the whole district if we have those butts in the seat before they decide to lose us, to leave us. And as one of the coordinators for Destination Imagination, we also support the STEM space. We could use it as well. I have had unicorns built in my sunroom, and we need space. The kids need space to build these programs. We've had fantastic success with Destination Imagination, which did start at Trombley, that Mrs. Dystra, one of our teachers.
Beardsley.
Yeah, but Mrs. Dystra has kept it going. She has 7 teams in the district right now. They have made it to states. They have gone to globals. One of the teams took like 7th in the world. We have a very strong family-backed program. We could use the district support.
Because they work out of their homes too,
Yeah.
most often.
Yes.
Because the schools don't have space.
Yeah, the things that the kids have built, we've had to do it in our homes. We could use the space for STEM. Thank you.
Last call for anybody that didn't have a chance to speak yet. Okay, we'll go around the table here. Administration and trustee comments. Dr. Bishop.
Thanks for your time, I appreciate your work.
Trustee Cotton. Trustee Klepp.
I think the same, appreciate all the feedback.
Dr. Tuttle.
No comment.
And I would just write out that we will take everything that was said tonight very seriously. I will certainly get some feedback on how maybe we can restructure the committee meetings, locate them differently to make sure that there's more time. I appreciate everybody speaking quickly and efficiently. It was not intended to be quite so packed. I tried to get through the agenda quickly to save space for public comment. So I hope I'll get better at this as well. So I hope everybody continues to be engaged and we will address what was brought up here. So,
You did great.
with that, I'll make a move to adjourn the meeting. Can I have a second, please?
Thank you.
We are adjourned.